Hey, how are you doing? My name's Amy Stockman from My Local Hypnosis. I am coming to you today. I'm excited to be sharing some of these thoughts that have been flying through my head. I find that when I'm out there in the garden, or when I'm in the shower, or when I'm laying in bed, not sleeping, trying to sleep, that kind of thing, stuff just comes into my head, and sometimes I'm able to tap into it the next day, and other times it just leaves me. But one thing that came to me, this was a few nights ago, I just haven't had a chance to record it, is the topic of you are not broken. You are not broken, you are just messy. And I was playing with this in my mind, and the first thing that came up is that, when you go to someone's house and it might be a bit disorganized, but it still feels comfortable. And then there's those shows that have, those decluttered people, and they turn up on the doorstep and they knock on the door, and the door opens, and then this kind of, panicky, forlorn, wide-eyed, deer in the headlights kind of person answers, and they're vulnerably opening the door to allow these camera people and these decluttered people to come into what must be, absolutely years worth of hoarding, and it's piled up the walls, and there's piles of everything. You can't cook in the kitchen because the kitchen's just full of stuff, and they just have like a track running through the house to get to the bathroom and the bed and stuff, and we all sit in our lounge room at home, and we're like, oh my goodness, how could you live like that, judgy because human beings are like that, and none of us are exempt from that trait of judging. Even when I don't want to judge, I've got my list of things that I don't judge, obviously, being in mental health and having lived through a lot of stuff myself. But what I find is, if you're not judging down, you're judging up. So it's kind of like, oh, look at that person, that must be so easy for them, So we're not exempt from it. No one's exempt from it. So yeah, like mental health and so forth is like that hoarding thing. It's the stuff that's behind the closed door. People can't see it, and it just becomes, it's like where life has become too much. Like it's past the point where it's possible for one person to be able to cope with it or clean it up. So it's uncomfortable to live with, but you don't know how to live any other way, and you can't even imagine how you're going to solve this, just past the point of capacity for one human being to solve. And there may also be benefits in staying the same. Obviously, we call them secondary gains, and that can be things like it's what I know, it's comfortable, because of this I don't have to do something else, So overwhelm, anxiety, depression, PTSD, all those letters, the ones that they give you when you go to the psychologist or psychiatrist, and you sort of walk out and proudly, or maybe not proudly, but I do see a lot of people that are like, well, that explains everything, it's not me, it's this thing that I've got, and then we can, obviously there's solutions for those things, like a medication or whatever. But any symptoms of mental dysregulation does not mean you are broken. You are not broken. You are just like those people with the hoardy houses, and perhaps you even are one of those as well, because the two kind of go hand in hand. Having stuff and being safe are a connected thing. So when life tips out of function and it's not working smoothly anymore, the rubbish didn't get taken out, whether it's real rubbish or just emotional rubbish, perhaps there's spaces that don't feel safe to go, whether it's internal in the mind, in the thoughts, in the emotions, or in real life actually getting out there. And sometimes that leads to self-loathing, abuse. There's just whatever it is, anxiety, depression, PTSD, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You are not broken. There's just something that happened that was bigger than you. And it might be something that happened to you, or it may be a situation that just, whatever it was, whether it was a long-term thing, you may not even be aware of it, to be honest. A lot of people aren't aware until we sit down and break it down, and I'm like, are you actually aware how strong you are, that you have survived this? And you've had to create a way to keep yourself functioning or safe in spite of the situation that you've been in your life, despite the story and the journey. And the more I learn, the more I study, the more I sit in rooms with educated people, and we go through processes, not just, it's not just clients that do processes, the stuff that I use, if you're doing a training, everyone in the room is doing the processes, and you hear some stories, and I can tell you right now that everyone has a story. Everyone has a story. I mean, some people are like, they just shove that stuff in the bin and jump on it and push it into the backyard and, light it on fire and pretend it never happened. But the truth is, whatever you've been through did happen. And, for some people, it can be a situation that you're born into, like from the very moment you opened your eyes, whoa, life just, hit you in the face. And other people, it might be a situation that happened in a single point in time, or it might be, a challenge that they've had to overcome, little things that have added up, like the little things, the things that you don't really notice. And then there's omissions. So people focus a lot on, what actually happened, but there's things that didn't happen, that were omitted, that can cause just as much pain, just as much heartache, just as much stress and distress as well, can even cause health issues. When something should happen and doesn't happen. And it can be just simple, basic care from caregivers, or it can be acknowledgement, it can be, absolutely anything. And it's like that hoarding thing again. I mean, if the windows don't get cleaned, then the windows are not clean, etc., etc. If no one took you to the dentist, if no one told you to brush your teeth, those omissions cause long-term things that you then are left to deal with. And it's like that with mental health as well. So we are all resilient. You are way stronger than you realize. But I can tell you, survival is not a nice feeling. Thriving, relaxed, calm, beautiful, in control, powerful, that sort of stuff is a completely different feeling. If you're in a planet that is a good, safe, kind planet in which you have power and control, that's a very different feeling to, the duck with its feet underwater, where, and a lot of people are like this. It's like you see this person just cruising through life. Underneath this is frantic paddling, and it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable at all. And then you just have the people, they're just, and I don't know what the difference is that makes the quiet duck paddlers and the people that, are just like flashing and thrashing around in the water, screaming for help. I'm not sure what the difference is, but some people wear their mess on the outside and they look, you can spot them a mile away, and other people hold their mess on the inside. And I can tell you it's a very, very heavy, dark burden to carry. It's almost easier to put it on the outside, because then family and friends have to do what they do to, there's always someone there that's going to take the brunt, even, if it's an enabling partner or something. So, basically, you're not broken. You're just a bit messy, and it can be cleaned up. And perhaps you can't do it on your own. That's okay if you've tried. We all do try. No one is sitting there going, I haven't tried. Everyone tries. So don't get me wrong. A lot of people really don't get this stuff until they're well over 30, perhaps even over 40. And I mean, I do work with teenagers too, but a lot of times it's, mums bringing teenagers into the mix. There's a word called agency. When we have personal agency, it means that we are taking control and power of our situation, our circumstance. And that's something that sort of leaves us when we start floundering around, when the world gets too big, too heavy. Agency goes, and that's when life starts to feel really out of control. So I highly recommend to people that if they have a loved one that needs some help, that they encourage that loved one to take action themselves, because you get so much more out of something when you are self-initiating and when you are the one invested in getting the results. So when we clear up our mess, so just imagine I'm a parent, and I get this all the time. So mum comes to me and she says, I'm so worried about my daughter, she's this and she's that and she's doing this and she's doing that and she's not doing this and she's not doing that. And I'm so worried and I really want to get her the help that she needs. And after doing this for years and years, and I used to just say, bring her in. And what I used to uncover over a period of sessions is that this was not the first generation where somebody needed help. And mum was like the duck with the feet underwater. Kid was like the flapping, floundering, person that was putting it all out there. And so what happens is I have found that the most effective results for teenagers comes when mum, not child, mum comes and does my programs, does my work. Because my son, when he was 12, I think that I finally gave in and said, yes, you may prescribe my son with Ritalin. I thought, I'm not giving my child something unless I've tried it myself, because, I don't want to get to, where he turns 18 and says, Mum, I was off my head for the entirety of my teenage years because you medicated me. So I took the medication first. Once I was comfortable with it, I then gave it to him. Actually, he was 10. So I gave it to him for 2 years, from age 10 to age 12. And I guess from looking at it from a therapy point of view, if you have a child or a teenager or a young adult and you feel they need help, my thing as a parent is, and I've done this as well with my kids, is work on yourself and you'll be amazed at the not only the learnings and understandings that you have in saying, well, I've done this and so I know what it is that my child will be going through if they do this form of therapy, but also that when we heal ourselves, it impacts not just us, but the lives of our kids, because it changes how we show up. And I can tell you right now that if you are a parent, you have impacted your children in ways that, may be positive, may be negative. I was listening to one of the NLP trainer. I just completed NLP trainers training, so I'm now a trainer of NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming and is based on therapy. So therapy models of communication. And one lady was telling her story, and she was 64 years old. And at age 54, she had said, I've lived my whole life with the things that my parents gave me. My mum said, don't take risks. My dad said, work really hard and nose down to the grindstone. And there was all these beautiful things that well-intended parents had placed upon this woman. And she said that she got to age 50-ish and she said, I have nothing left in me. I am not happy. I am not satisfied. I feel like life is empty and I'm so disconnected. And she actually went and did her own therapy, her own work, changed countries, learned to sail, bought a sailboat. She's now 64 years old and, is one of a competitive sailboat thing, works in a university somewhere doing brilliant work. And, she helps other people now, and a completely different life. Her whole life actually changed once she actually unpacked that she had been living her life with the programming of her parents. So we have good intentions with our kids. What they take from what we give them and how they apply it can cause extreme misalignment, because we're all different. We all need different things. And it's probably a bit of a long talk today, but there's a lot of stuff that, there's a lot of stuff to talk about when it comes to mental health. So how can we clean up our own mess? So I'm going to use an example that I heard Jordan Peterson use. He's a psychologist. He talks on YouTube. Mostly men listen to him, interestingly enough, but I actually really enjoy his stuff because it's really dry and logical, and it suits me quite fine because I like things that make sense. So he talks about personal improvement, personal development, like how can I sort my life out? If my life is a mess, how can I sort it out? And he says, imagine you're in a room, and you can use the room that you're in right now and just look around. Now imagine you thought to yourself, how can I make this room better? And you look around, and I can look around the room I'm in right now and I can think, well, I could pack away those papers over there, tidy up those trays. I could clean that writing off the mirror behind me. And, there'd be things that you can't see because of the camera position that I could tidy up. And it's just picking up that one or two things and maybe giving things a wipe and so forth. And so Jordan Peterson talks about that when you want to do self-improvement, just look at yourself and think, what's one thing that I can do to make my life better? And if you do that every day and you're consistent with it, because that's how real results are achieved, is with consistency. Even with therapy, if you don't show up consistently, you don't do the work consistently, you won't get the results. And that's part of the 6-week program that I guarantee results for anxiety, depression and PTSD in the 6-week program. But you have to show up and you have to do the work. And if you do the work, then you do get results, which is obviously really important, because you don't get results if you don't do anything. So yeah, once you've started to check out the obvious things, if there's something that you're doing that's self-destructive, or something you're saying to yourself, or a thing that you're thinking, or perhaps people that you're associating with that are not healthy for you. Who you associate with is one of the major things. And like, I used an example the other day when I was speaking to some people about when people date. So when people are single, they seem to gravitate towards other single people, specifically of the same gender. So you may have a whole group of single women or single mums, or, and they're all gravitating around each other, and they're all talking about, how to get this wonderful man that they may wish to have in their life. And my point was, if you want to, find yourself a partner, don't take advice from people who don't have one. It's really important to look at what you want, and then surround yourself with people who have what you want, so that you can actually, model off them and be able to think, get advice and guidance and so forth. And the same with anything in life. If you want to have something, try and find someone else who's got it, and then associate with them, because that's going to increase your chances. Otherwise, the comfort of being in that, we all seek belonging at some unconscious level. So, same with weight. If you sort of, a little bit chubby, and all your friends are a little bit chubby, and you all get together and eat cake together, you can all talk about, the latest diet, you can all talk about it, but in essence, that's not the place for you to connect. If you want to drive yourself, you find somebody who's fit, slim, healthy, has lifestyle habits of that, and, get yourself into that group and environment, because we unconsciously do pick up what other people are doing. I know for me, if I go to a cafe and someone says, oh, I'm going to get a free and I'm like, oh, I'm going to get a free and too. If someone's standing next to me going, oh, I'm going to get a, kale juice, I think to myself, kale juice, well, that's nutritious, I might try that. So it does matter what you're doing in your life and who you're associating with. So little improvements, have a look what's obvious that I can improve quickly and easily about myself, like that room, picking something up. And look, this isn't to say that you're going to be that hoarder and then you're just going to, unpack one box and the whole thing's going to go away, but do something in the right direction, because every change in the right direction is a change in the right direction. A little bit better is a little bit better. If you're in a messy house and you just start with the dishes, because you know how they talk about, be careful, it's a slippery slope, and they talk about, negativity and going downhill kind of thing, gateway drugs and so forth, the slippery slope into kind of demise, hell, despair, and all that sort of stuff. It's not, I was thinking about this myself in the car while I was driving the other day. And for me, it's not actually a slippery slope into negative and a big steep hill into the positive, because that's kind of how it's sold to us, isn't it? It's like you got to climb to success, and, it's a slippery hill to roll down into failure. And so I was thinking about it, and I thought to myself, it's not a hill. What it is, it's momentum. It's once you get moving in a particular direction, you start to get momentum. So yes, if you are on a trajectory into the opposite direction to, let's call it the bad downward slide, the hardest part is to just stop, and then start to create momentum the other way. But that's the same for any travel. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's not a slippery slope down my street, towards the south, and then another slippery slope towards the west. It's basically, if I'm driving along the motorway, I need to apply the brakes. And then if I want to go the other way, I need to, get it in reverse, or perhaps I want to turn around and then start driving in the direction that I want. And that's how I view things. There's no slippery slopes. There's just momentum and acceleration and brakes and stopping and, little actions in the right direction is beginning that momentum. So a little bit better every day. So just set yourself that task. And look, people say to me, can I quit smoking? Can I quit drinking? Sure you can. How many are you smoking at the moment? How many are you drinking at the moment? Well, okay, well, that's fine. Just drink one less today, all week, and then next week drink one less again. And eventually you won't smoke anymore. And that's how I quit smoking, was by just smoking fewer and fewer and fewer. Like I'd quit, I'd hold off as long as I could. I'd think, I'm not going to smoke today. And I'd think, well, it's 9 o'clock and I haven't had a morning cigarette, so I'm going to see if I can get till 10. Yep, I got till 10. And 11 o'clock I might crack and I might have a cigarette. All right, I'm going to start again. I'm going to try and see how long I can't have a cigarette for. I've had one now. Keep going. It might be like 2 or 3, and just keep going. And for some people, if they're heavy smokers, that might be very short periods of time that in the beginning. But as you keep doing it repeatedly, and this is that, like I call it the flap principle. If you've read my book, you'll be familiar with this. But anything that you do repeatedly every day gives you, birds don't kind of fly by just going like this. They fly by going like this. And everything you do repeatedly, it becomes part of a momentum. And it's like that momentum I was talking about before. It takes you in a particular direction. So that's like that with anything. If you want to be slimmer, if you want to be fitter, if you want to be quit drinking, quit smoking, one thing to note is that something that is really important about repeat behaviors is the stuff you say in your mind. Now, people say, like about positive thoughts and negative thoughts and all that sort of stuff. Don't worry about what you actually have been saying in the past to yourself. One thing to do is to deliberately say something good. And it might feel like a lie in the beginning, but you can just say something good. And I like to say things that will give me some kind of tangible imagination type of thing. So something like, I really enjoy the freedom of being able to spend money without guilt. Like, I feel good spending money. I really enjoy the feeling of feeling good spending money. I have lots of money, and that gives me like a tangible feeling, like I feel good spending money because I have lots of money and it feels good to have money. That would be a great thing if you are looking at increasing your abundance. And the thing is that when I'm having a negative thought, I can feel it in my body. It starts to feel horrible. I catch myself and I say no. And some of my thoughts are so dark and so ugly and so frighteningly horrible. My imagination can conjure up the most horrific outcomes for things. I sometimes wonder, when people lose it and they go psychotic and they do something terrible and they say, like that the voices told me to do it or whatever. I just sometimes wonder, do we all have that capacity? But some people it just got too big, too loud and too ugly in there, and they just lost control of it, like the overwhelm of the hoarder. You need to say no to yourself if you're having dark, horrible thoughts about anything at all. And the more you say no, the more your unconscious mind actually picks it up and says, she doesn't seem to like that when I do that. So, we won't imagine tragedies or anything like that into the future. Okay, so I remember a conversation I had with a woman. She had quite a unique financial situation. She hadn't actually ever worked, and she had somehow managed, and we all do this, to find a workaround for her problem. So she had ways and support mechanisms in place in order for her to survive. And so our unconscious mind is like that. It will actually provide for us in a way that will suit us and suit our situation. And it does always surprise me how someone will come to me and they will explain their life to me, and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. What you've actually got set up here is a very unique situation that, I wouldn't be, consciously be able to create if I even wanted to. And yet, for the purpose of safety, which that's the unconscious mind's one overarching core directive of and purpose, is to keep us safe. So it will do that in any way it can. It will cope with those situations and circumstances and past events. It will just decide that, perhaps it's overeating or drugs or addictions or dissociating or procrastinating. And I've seen like people literally leave their bodies right in my chair because their body is like, their unconscious says, oh, this therapist is going to do something terrible with me that I can't cope with, so it's not safe for me right now, and they just leave their body. Like, it's a really, really quite alarming thing to witness, because, you know, one person, you've got this person that's speaking to you, and the next minute they're just like staring off into space, and you're like, nope, they're just not home, and, you know, eventually they come back. So I have learned over the years that, you know, to be aware that that can happen. And I've heard stories of people I've trained with who have their own stories. And I remember one woman, a trauma therapist trainer, saying it was a particularly overwhelming morning, and so I thought, what will make things better? A cup of tea. That makes everything better. She said she went to the kettle, she turned the kettle on, and she left her body, didn't come back till 7 hours later. And they talk about this in mental hospitals. Now, I'm not expecting that everyone that's watching has had a dissociation episode. However, just to let you know that, you know, things can get to that point when, you know, where we just shut down, where the fight, flight, freeze is just like through the roof, and the freeze just happens and we just leave our body. So there's so much to talk about when it comes to anxiety, depression, PTSD, mental health. It's just an endless topic. But the punchline to this whole long thing is, I want you to know you're not broken. You've just got some mess, and it's cleanable, it's sortable, it's all okay. It's okay. It's just stuff, and it's not usually, and I'm using this term broadly, but from the clients that I've had come in, and from my own experience and the stories that I hear all the time, the mess in us is usually not ours. Not ours. It's the stuff from other people, their omissions, their behaviors, their actions, their choices, the stuff that we had to go through at the hands of other people. So how can anyone judge anyone who's anxious, depressed, or all that sort of stuff, when the stuff that they're carrying around is not even theirs? How's that? How is that? Okay, that's a pretty powerful thing to recognize, is that you are not broken. You just have internal mess that's no different to having a messy house. It is cleanable, and it's not even your mess. You've actually had to create ways to cope with the stuff that has been dealt to you in your life. Wow, that shifts a whole lot of stuff just from the get-go when it comes to sorting it out, doesn't it? Because it's, you know, sometimes we think there's something wrong with me, I'm bad, I'm different, I don't fit in, I can't do it, everyone else can, you know, that sort of stuff. You know, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not something enough. Like, it's all the stuff that's going on in here, but it's all lies. It's not true. You're not broken. There's just a mess on the inside, and you are 100%, once you get that mess sorted, 100% functionable. You have everything within you that you need in order to function. You've actually got more strength, more resilience, more capability than you're even aware of, because lift all this stuff away and you'd be surprised what's underneath. If any of this has resonated with you, if any of this has touched your heart, your mind, or even, you know, you're thinking of someone else that you love that may have anxiety or depression, PTSD, or all the other ABCs out there, please connect. I'm here. We'd love to work with you. Have a beautiful day.